see the engine view there. There you can see just a little bit of motion. Coming into the final minute of the count. SpaceX launch director will make their call if they are go for launch in the final 30 seconds, waiting to see if they pass through the final 60-second hold point.
All right, we are through the gate. Still no holds on the board. 50 seconds to go. Starship getting ready to fly.
Coming up on the launch director's call next.
Flight directors go for launch.
And a good go for launch call from the flight director. 20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Enter ignition. And liftoff. Liftoff of Starship Flight 13. Rocket has cleared the tower.
Seconds into flight, 33 out of 33 Raptor engines lit on the Super Heavy booster, arcing away from us here at Starbase.
And a minute, 22 seconds into flight. So far, looks like all 33 Raptor engines still lit. SpaceX approaching hot staging next. The reduction of the engines on the Super Heavy booster from 33 down to 5. The ignition of the Raptor engines on the ship upper stage. And a separation of the two. They will attempt the directional flip in the right direction this time, send the booster on its way towards a good boost back burn. 2 minutes into flight, less than 20 seconds to MECO. Super Heavy, most engines cut off. Good view of those engines there. Ship should be in hot staging now.
Tap.
6 ignite.
Backburn startup.
And the booster now doing its boost back burn. It looks like we lit all 33 initially. Now we're down to 13. We're seeing 6 out of 6 Raptors lit on the ship.
Backburn shut down.
And boost back burn shut down. So it looks like we were able to get through the boost back burn this time around. It was one of the key objectives we didn't have on the last flight. And we've got 6 engines lit on the ship. All right, so that's the first of 2 burns that the booster is going to be doing to kind of send it back towards us. It's going to be landing a couple of miles offshore from Starbase, hopefully. We're going to try and get it all the way down to do a landing burn, where we're going to use those 13 center engines. They're going to ignite. That's what's going to really bleed off all that velocity that it's built up. And it'll eventually, hopefully, transition to 5 engines to kind of fine-tune its path in, and then all the way down to 3 for the remaining bit. All right, we've got a couple of minutes to go until we get there. So booster's going to coast for a little bit. Ship still seeing 6 out of 6 Raptor engines lit. 4 minutes into the flight. Ship's got about 4 minutes left. Getting some killer views. Kate, Nate, how was the view from down there?
T plus 4 minutes, 23 seconds into the flight, as you've been hearing, all progressing well so far on Starship Flight 13. Attempt number 2 going well so far. The super heavy booster completing its boost back burn, making its way towards its targeted splashdown in the Gulf. Coming up on 5 minutes into the flight, the next major milestone ahead, Booster 20 will perform its landing burn beginning about 6 minutes, 27 seconds into the mission. Good onboard camera views. You can see the shadow from the plume out stretching across the Gulf. The landing burn will last again from T plus 6 minutes, 27 seconds, less than 30 seconds in duration, but expected to be able to conduct a controlled splashdown out in the Gulf here today. Good on little patina on the ship upper stage there. There are a myriad of camera views on board the ship upper stage. 6:16, just about 10 seconds to the start of the landing burn here for the super heavy booster. Still 6 good engines on the ship upper stage. Let's listen in for the start of this burn.
Call out for landing burn startup for the booster. I have a feeling the crowd's about to go wild here.
And another awesome landing for Super Heavy. Congratulations to all the teams here at Starbase and at our SpaceX team. An amazing, amazing view.
Everything continues to go well with ship, as you can see there on your screen.
Now T plus 7 minutes, 15 seconds into flight. We were just talking off mic that the booster engine configuration may have been a little bit out of color from what they were expecting, and SpaceX's Dan Hewitt says that they were expecting the 13 engines to light up, and that didn't appear to happen exactly as they were hoping for, so a bit of a harder splashdown than what they were imagining. Ship is in terminal guidance now, approaching the end of its current burn. All 6 engines still ignited. Let's listen in for the call on ship engine shutdown.
And engine shutdown. All right, Starship 6 Raptor engines have successfully shut down.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And there's our call out for nominal orbit insertion. So we got a ship in space. We've got a booster in the Gulf where we were planning to send it. It's a hell of a start to the day, Kate.
Yeah, it sure is. All of our colleagues here are filing in through the doors. A lot of people wanted to stay outside and hear the boom. And so it's pretty great to see a ship in space, and everybody's super excited down here.
That's right. And as guaranteed, it has been an awesome day so far. All this action in just 9 minutes now. And objectives are done for the booster. Just want to quickly flag that that booster did land in a clear zone. We clear those before launch, well ahead, so that we ensure everyone is safe before the launch and after. So we're getting ready now for our in-space objectives.
Yeah, we've got a few minutes until the next milestone. So sit tight and enjoy this.
So with 9.5 minutes now elapsed so far in the mission, the next major milestone out ahead of SpaceX is the payload deployment, which should begin at about T plus 6 minutes and 40 seconds, lasting a little more than 11 minutes in duration. A live look now out back over the waters of the Gulf from our camera perspective from Adam Bernstein over on South Padre Island. So far, a relatively good mission for SpaceX. They got the boost back burn where they wanted it to, not the landing burn. Want to bring in Stephen Clark, reporter with Ars Technica here, as we are just hearing over the nets that the ship upper stage flight termination system has been safed now that it is in a good coasting trajectory along that suborbital path. Stephen, your thoughts so far on what we've seen and where ship is at the moment?
Yeah, well, certainly a notable improvement from the last flight. No engine failures on the way uphill on booster or ship, so that's a win. And it looked like the boost back burn went according to plan. That was really when things started to go wrong for the booster for Super Heavy back on Flight 12 in May. They got past that milestone. Not sure. We'll have to learn, in the days and weeks ahead, what happened with the landing burn. That clearly was not a nominal landing burn. They had a hard splashdown in the Gulf, just off the coast of Texas. But like it came down at a much slower, much more controlled manner than the last flight, which really seemed like it came down at close to terminal velocity. But not all the engines appeared to ignite for the landing burn. So that's something that I think they still need to work out for the next flight. And, it would not surprise me at all if the next flight they opt to do another water landing with the booster until they get that nailed down before they bring it back to Starbase and risk trying to land back at the pad. But ship is doing great from everything I've seen so far. It looks beautiful and great shots from space out over the Caribbean Sea right now.
So comparing Flight 12 to Flight 13, since those are the closest apples-to-apples comparisons we have with two version 3 iterations of the rocket, the last time when they got to this point, they ultimately made the determination that because they had one of the engines on ship go out during the coast phase, or as they were getting to the coast phase, that they ultimately decided to forego the in-space Raptor relight. Do you think that given the engines performed on ship, it seems like as expected, but not on the booster, that they'll still try to go for the Raptor relight, or do you think they might wave that off again this time around? I don't think we've heard anything on that. Just yet.
We haven't heard anything yet. I don't see anything yet that would cause them to forego the relight at this point, because that's an important objective, and all the engines burned for the planned duration. They had a good insertion into their suborbital trajectory, cut off right on time, and everything, the way the ship is behaving right now, looks to be completely as expected. So unless something happens in the next few minutes or something goes terribly wrong with this Starlink deployment, sequence, I think they're going to go for the relight attempt, and I think that's a big milestone for them.
Yeah, that'll definitely be good to see them get that completed.
But unfortunately, it looks like sorry. Well, it looks like we're going to be in orbital darkness again for the Starlink deployment, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think right now they're prioritizing getting daylight views of the heat shields at the splashdown site versus good orbital daylight views of Starship deployment. So hopefully the first time we see an orbital flight of Starship, there'll be a daylight deployment. Actually, we are just a little more than 14 minutes into the flight right now. The payload deployment start is coming up now in less than 3 minutes time. So coming up next, we will see the so-called PEZ dispenser door open, and hopefully we'll get some views inside Ship 40 as well. Get a nice angle of those Starlink V3 satellites. Just about 15 minutes into flight. Keep your eyes just above that S40 decal. That's where the door is. We should see that metal slat open up. Looks like the door is open now. SpaceX's Kate Tice noting that because there are not the same type of cameras on board the Starlink version 3 satellites, we unfortunately won't be getting the same type of camera views looking back at Starship that we did during the deployment of the final 2 last time around. A little bit surprised at that, since in the description of this launch, SpaceX does say, quote, 6 of the satellites have been modified with a suite of cameras to scan Starship's heat shield and transmit imagery down to operators to continue testing methods of analyzing Starship's heat shield readiness for return to the launch site for future missions, end quote. So just reading that, it sounds like the types of cameras that are on board will be good to get imagery down to SpaceX for analysis, but not necessarily the type of quick turnaround imagery that they would necessarily be able to broadcast in the midst of this live stream. So for those hoping to see the dramatic third-person perspective of Starship this time around, might be disappointed for that. But you do get these onboard views within Starship, and you see the first of the V3s getting poised for deployment, and there it goes. The very first deployment of a Starlink version 3 satellite. Now again, these are following a suborbital trajectory. So they are not going into orbit with the rest of the Starlink constellation, but SpaceX has said that their goal is to extend the solar panels on these satellites and attempt to connect to the rest of the constellation before their demise about 20 minutes from now. See, the next V3 go off into the suborbital void. Coming up on 19 minutes into the flight, this deployment sequence is set to last until just about T plus 27 minutes, 39 seconds or so. Let's go ahead and listen in to this update from Dan Hewitt.
Heat shield imaging that we attempted last flight. We don't have that camera view that we got on Flight 12 where you kind of see the satellite leaving Starship. Those aren't on the V3 satellites, but we are going to, on the last couple that go out, have some pretty narrow field view cameras that are going to be looking back at Starship, turn on some flashlights. And this is a test of a capability that we're really going to want when we start doing orbital flights, to just add that extra layer of safety, that extra layer of reliability, where we're going to be able to image Starship's heat shield after it's gone through ascent, after it's been in space, before it re-enters. So we're going to try to test that again today. The heat shield imaging, we didn't get a whole lot last time. Looks like we got some thunderstorms on planet Earth below us. But a couple more satellites to go, it looks like.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome to see our V3s in space. I want to give a shout out to our Starlink colleagues. And we expect payload deploy to run until about 27.5 minutes, so about another 7 minutes here. The Starlink team will be attempting to speed run these test these version 3 satellites, where they will attempt to do a few tests, such as extend the new solar arrays and antennas. They're also going to try and connect these V3 satellites with ground stations and turn on the satellite's communication systems. Now, they're only going to have about 20 minutes or so to do all of this, as these satellites only have that long before they demise in the atmosphere or break up due to that friction when they re-enter the atmosphere. So what we learn from today's deployment will help progress and move the program forward, which is super exciting. You could basically say that the payload's payload is data. That's right. We're getting very Inception here. Now, in addition to those tests for Starlink, for the Starlink team, as Dan mentioned, 6 of the satellites have been modified with engineering cameras to help scan Starship's heat shield. That will help inform our analysis of Starship's readiness for future catch returns back here at our launch site. So for those that might be unfamiliar, we are currently capable of catching our super heavy booster, and we've done that a couple of times. We have not yet attempted to catch our second stage or ship, and so that is going to be a very exciting milestone when that day comes.
For sure, and we're building up to it with today's tests. We are still planning to do our water splashdown in the Indian Ocean, so stay tuned for that. That's only about 40 minutes away. But still, in space, we keep on deploying our Starlink satellites. Again, these are our V3 version of our Starlink satellites, a whole host of added capabilities to our version 2 that's currently in orbit.
And this is our team here at Starbase, Texas.
These are all of the team members that have helped build the vehicle, that have built the Pez dispenser, and got it ready to fly today. Amazing work.
Now, for those of you that have just recently tuned in, there is a spaceship in your screen, we promise. Right now, the ship is in orbital darkness, so we don't have any available sunlight from the sun to help illuminate the scene. But what you can see moving out from that smally lit space, those are the V3 satellites as they are being deployed. And essentially, the ship is illuminated from the inside, and so we're able to see the light come out through the payload door.
Right. Just a really small sliver of light at the top. That's our Pez dispenser. That's how we're both loading our satellites into the rocket and deploying it. It's pretty novel. We've got about 3.5 minutes still left of our payload deploy sequence.
Yep, looks like we've got 16 satellites deployed, so 4 more to go. These last couple will have those cameras, so if you see any sudden bright lights, that'll be flashlights turning on those satellites to try and get some imagery of Starship's heat shield. 17 out the door, 3 more to go, and 18. All right, and while we wait for these last 2, we did confirm we are still go for our Raptor relight demonstration a little bit later in the flight today, so we will be looking to relight one of those Raptor engines on ship. And that'll be our next major milestone after we get through these final 2 satellites.
Just at 25 minutes into our flight, it's crazy to think that we're already screaming at 27,000 kilometers an hour, 200 kilometers above the ocean surface. Amazing.
Yeah. Now, for those of you that lost count, we have deployed almost all of our 20 Starlink satellites. I believe our last count was at 18, so we should be seeing 2 more. And we're very excited to see our version 3 satellites in space. And these are these are real satellites. Right. They're not just demonstration sats like we had last time. These are going to basically have a 20-minute lifespan where our Starlink engineering team will attempt to perform a number of tests and really speed run those tests during that time.
Right. And in terms of satellite lifespans, 20 minutes it's the shortest you could possibly get, but hopefully in that 20-minute time frame we can really try and ink out as many tests as we can.
It looks like we might have some this might actually be light from one of the Starlink satellites. As we mentioned before, a few of them, 6 of them actually are equipped with flashlights to look back at Starship as we want to image the heat shield and understand the heat shield performance through the ascent phase, as this information is very important for us to know and understand as we prepare for operations that will enable ship to come back to Starbase for landing. For catch, I should say.
Right. And we are about 40 seconds away from that planned payload deployment sequence being complete.
Yep, looks like we've just got those last 2 to go. These ones might be coming out. Oops, they're starting to see motion. 19 out the door, 1 more.
It looks like we got a crowd at our Hawthorne, California location. Some colleagues gathering outside of mission control there as well.
That marks, if I'm not mistaken, our 20th. So our payload deploy sequence is now complete. Starship will now close its payload bay door and continue to coast around Earth to the Indian Ocean. Still a lot of major events to come today, including our Raptor relight burn at T plus 38 minutes, 58 seconds, followed by atmospheric re-entry, where the heat shield will be put to test, and eventually our splashdown. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go.
And some nice artificial light from the Starlink version 3 satellites as they drift away from ship. You can see the Pez dispenser door has closed. As you've been listening to the SpaceX commentators, there are cameras on board the Starlink V3 satellites, and it actually looks like you might be able to see one of them just drifting into the frame in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. You see that array of dots of light sort of drifting there. SpaceX on the nets calling out the completion of TVC checkouts, thrust vector control checkouts, presumably on the ship engine before the relight's set to take place, coming up in about 10 or so minutes. Seeing some actuation with the forward flaps on Ship 40. Still got quite a bit of illumination from the Starlink satellites. You can see another one of those still drifting into view from the perspective of the ship upper stage. Again, the goal with the Starlink V3 satellites was to extend their solar panels and try to connect to the broader Starlink constellation. And as Kate Tice mentioned, they are going to be working quickly since they've got just about 20 minutes or a little bit less before the satellite's demise. Unlike the ship, of course, they are not equipped with the same type of protective heat shield, and so they're very intentionally designed to not make it back through the atmosphere. I want to bring in our friend and colleague over at Ars Technica, Stephen Clark, who's been watching the progress of this mission so far along with us and is seeing now the views of Starship and the successful deployment of those V3s. Stephen, your thoughts on the first deployment of Starlink version 3 operational satellites and the mission at this point, this most recent milestone? Got the go-ahead as well for the engine relight, which is good news.
Yeah, well, everything is proceeding really well. The deployment sequence looked really clean, looked very similar to the last one. So the Pez dispenser mechanism, I think, is well demonstrated at this point. They've tested it on several flights now, so that's a good sign for SpaceX. And interested to hear if they were able to get any images from Starlink from any of the satellites as they deployed. They mentioned a couple of them had cameras to inspect the heat shield. I really thought it was interesting. We heard Dan Hewitt from SpaceX talk about when they go to an orbital flight, they want to be able to inspect and image the heat shield in orbit before they re-enter, after launch and before re-entry. And that really reminds me of the latter days of the shuttle program, where they developed, the boom to put on the end of the robotic arm to inspect the aisles underneath the shuttle in flight, and taking a lesson learned from NASA's experience with the shuttle. Of course, SpaceX wants their heat shield to be a lot more robust, easier to handle, more reliable than the shuttle heat shield, which was carefully inspected, refurbished. Tiles were replaced between flights as needed. SpaceX doesn't want to be doing any of that. They want to be able to land or catch the ship and relaunch it same day, and so without even much inspection. So they but it does use the similar ceramic tiles that are sensitive to impact and sensitive to things like micrometeoroid and orbital debris potentially in a long duration orbital flight. So really cool to hear that they're going to make an effort to inspect the heat shield before they commit to reentry on an orbital flight. Really spectacular views here of the Starlink satellites. Really cool. Looks like some UAP phenomena, but of course we know what those are.
Yeah, and you were just talking about it flying in front of the heat shield tile side of ship, and it looks like one of those Starlink satellites is doing just that. So, the benefit of having not just hunks of steel that sort of listlessly float away from ship, but actually to have their own bit of maneuverability, I think is going to be a really important asset on this mission. And hopefully we hear sooner rather than later following this flight, what the results of this imaging process is like for these V3 satellites and how well they're able to integrate into the broader constellation too. I imagine, the Starlink team is going to be very eager to see how the first V3 satellites play with the rest of the constellation.
Yeah, indeed. And hopefully we see some imagery from SpaceX on social media or something in the hours or days ahead. See what these satellites are capturing. It's really cool from this perspective.
Yeah, first outside words coming from the NASA administrator wishing SpaceX or congratulating them on the flight underway so far, saying, quote, "When Starship comes online, its capabilities will be game-changing, not least of which will be ensuring that we never give up the moon again," end quote. Obviously, the folks at the Human Landing System office very closely watching this mission since version 3 iteration of Starship, not too dissimilar from what we're seeing right now. We'll be docking with Orion potentially come this time next year, which will be quite something to see this rocket lift off from whether it's Florida or over there in Texas and make its way up into orbit to await the approaching Orion spacecraft. One thing that we're just thinking about as we're watching the ship during the deployment sequence, and just for folks that are wondering where we are in the timeline before I go into my next train of thought, we're just about 36 minutes into this mission, and the next milestone is coming up with the Raptor in-space relight demo in just about 3 minutes time from now. So want to make sure we don't step on that demo. But Stephen, obviously the Starlink constellation is going to be really important for SpaceX from a business perspective. But, as we've talked before, a lot of folks are going to want to fly their payload on Starship at some point down the road. And, folks over at Bloomberg reporting that SpaceX reportedly not taking any more customer orders from the commercial side of things beyond 2028. How do you think the broader spaceflight community is kind of looking at Starship at this point, given that we haven't heard a whole heck of a lot about deployment of payloads that are not flat pack type satellites like Starlink?
Yeah, we've seen some movement in the satellite manufacturing industry of late. Several companies coming out with flat sat designs that are modeled on Starlink version 3, similar dimensions that can use the same PEZ dispenser on Starship that we've seen demonstrated today. And so a few of these companies have come out with satellites to utilize that for different purposes. Starlink is broadband communications, but you could potentially do a Earth remote sensing mission. You could do a military type missions as well with this flat sat form factor. So I suspect we'll see those fly on Starship probably before we see a more traditional boxy type payload on Starship. But not every satellite can use that flat panel design. I'm thinking of things with big telescopes, missions that require large aperture antennas. Other types of spacecraft need different designs, need different architectures. So the people I've talked to in the industry are all pretty confident that SpaceX will eventually come out with a more conventional deployment system for other types of payloads. They're not sharing that information right now with the public, and from what I can tell, they're not sharing any details like that with their colleagues in the industry either.
Yeah, lots of folks that are going to be eager to get those designs so they can really start to make firm plans with upcoming flights of Starship. Just a quick note on the Starlink satellites that were just deployed. SpaceX noting that they were able to deploy the solar arrays and make the laser link connections with some of the other Starlink satellites currently up in orbit. So that's some good news from the Starlink team and their quick performance there. The burn is about to begin. Let's listen in.
Done about 3 seconds previously. And so that should be coming up within the next couple of seconds. Let's stand by.
Relight demo startup.
You see relight there on your screen.
Wow.
And confirmation over the net. Relight shutdown. The burn has ended. Congrats to the team on this milestone. I mean, it's crazy to see how we can maneuver in space, and just another icing on the cake for today's mission. So we're going to be taking another quick break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes before.
And while we didn't see inside the engine compartment of Ship 40, did get on-screen telemetry data and confirmation from SpaceX of a good Raptor relight, which was a big box left open from Flight 12, now checked with Flight 13. So another major milestone underway and completed for SpaceX as they continue on with Ship 40. Now 40 plus minutes into the flight. The entry profile will begin in roughly 7 minutes time. But Stephen, we really focused on this last time during Flight 12, that not being able to complete that in-space relight demonstration was certainly an indication that this mission was definitely not, or more than likely not, going to be an orbital flight, which of course it was not. How big of a deal was it that they were able to get V3 relit in space for the first time?
Huge. I think that's a massive accomplishment to be able to get that behind them. They've done it, I think, once or twice with V2, if I recall. Very short burns, like 3 seconds. This was about 14 seconds in duration, and we saw the velocity on the lower left go up. So we saw some acceleration from the burn of the single Raptor engine, and some really cool light effects in the camera as well. Wasn't really sure what to expect to see, to be honest, but looked really neat, and we saw the velocity change as expected. So I think this is an accomplishment, a demonstration that shows that future ships in orbit will be able to deorbit themselves, and that takes away one of the safety concerns of putting Starship in orbit and worrying about it being stranded and unable to deorbit in a controlled manner, having it come down over land or a city, God forbid, uncontrolled. It could be a safety risk for the public, but this shows that they can maneuver and change the orbit of Starship in space, and this was the most significant in-space maneuver that Starship has conducted to date.
Yeah, and we heard from SpaceX President Gwen Shotwell saying that if they were able to get this milestone that we just saw done, that potentially we could see an orbital flight with Flight 14. Dangerous to make predictions when it comes to SpaceX, but for however much stock you want to put in your answer to this next question, do you think an orbital flight on Flight 14 is a realistic possibility, or do you think we've got at least one more suborbital mission out ahead of the company?
I like your phrasing. Realistic possibility, yes. Will they do it? I don't know. But realistic possibility after this relight, I can say yes. And of course, it depends on the rest of the flight. They've got to get the ship down to a controlled splashdown. They've been able to do that pretty reliably in the last few flights, but still some significant challenges to go here.
So definitely maybe. I like it.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we are just now 43 and a half minutes into the flight so far. About another 4 minutes to go before the entry profile really gets started. But as you can see with the telemetry data and the positioning graphic there on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you can see the orientation of ship getting into that correct entry angle of attack as it makes its way back through the atmosphere. Looks like maybe some thunderstorms down below. Looks like a little pop of lightning, if not mistaken, there for just a second. Obviously well below the ship and not in an area that would, threaten this flight right now. But on the comms, they noted that they are starting entry and ship is at a good attitude. Starting to see a little bit of plasma buildup, almost with some aurora-like colors with the green and purple. View inside the ship engine section here. And SpaceX noting on social media that they did successfully make contact with all 20 V3 satellites. So a good update confirming that the first deployment of Starlink V3 satellites, they were able to make contact with all 20 of them. Certainly bodes well for the future of the constellation as they are looking to launch satellites into orbit in the future. A little bit of a video freeze here. We're working to see if we can smooth that out. Stand by. We will bring this back in as soon as possible. And we've got that back for you now.
They are now below the Kármán line, so 94 kilometers and descending.
And it looks like done so in a controlled manner, so things continuing to progress well. Now 46 minutes and change into the flight so far. The landing burn as Ship 40 approaches the Indian Ocean will kick on at about T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 3 seconds. They will perform the landing flip and then orient into that vertical position, then reduce their engines from 3 down to 2, and then 2 down to 1. And at that point, there should be quite a few camera angles on the ship upper stage, assuming that SpaceX, like with previous flights, is on course for that pinpoint reentry that we've seen them perform multiple times now. The motion you're seeing on the camera view on the right is from one of the cameras that is on the tip of one of the forward flaps. And then I'll look back at one of the aft flaps on the left-hand side of your screen. As SpaceX is coming up to some milestones for entry, let's go ahead and listen in for those.
Specific points, we're doing pretty well.
That's right. So we'll continue to hear multiple callouts as we go through this phase. One of those callouts will be that the ship is transonic. We'll also hear another one when it's subsonic. Transonic will be referring to the period of flight where velocities of airflow surrounding and flowing past the vehicle are concurrently below, at, and above the speed of sound, so somewhere in the range of Mach 0.8 to 1.2. For reference, commercial jets have a range of cruising speeds, but most fly at roughly Mach 0.74, 0.85. Just for reference, that's between 480 miles per hour to 575 miles per hour, or 770 to 930 kilometers an hour. And subsonic, another call out that you'll hear later on in the stream, subsonic will refer to speeds that are much less than the speed of sound. So at this point in flight, the ship's velocity will be slowing down drastically. So with reentry well underway, we'll take another break and return just before the ship's landing burn, targeted for T plus 1 hour and 5 minutes.
.5 minutes into flight, seeing some very dynamic visuals here as the ship continues to make it through the reentry profile. Just about 50 minutes post liftoff, seeing slightly different coloration there for just a second from that one flat profile. And there you see it again there. Stephen, you and I have watched a number of ship entries, and you more than I when it comes to some of the footage during the shuttle program. This more dynamic, almost, and I hate to incorrectly characterize it, but just the light blue parts of the plasma that are streaking across, that looks different than what we've seen with previous ship entries. How would you characterize it?
Good question. Well, I agree that it's different, but no idea what is causing that. I'm not a thermal engineer or heat shield engineer, but we do know that SpaceX was planning to test Starship at higher dynamic pressures on this flight. So that may be what we're seeing here at this point in reentry, but I don't know for sure.
Maybe some additional venting that's combining with the more aggressive entry profile that just creates a different lighting dynamic of the plasma. I mean, so far we haven't heard anything from the team that makes it sound like they're concerned with this at all. So, don't want to be hyperbolic when it comes to our commentary. We'll watch as it comes. Just wanted to note the difference there from what we've seen previously.
Yep, and they're also nearing sunrise. So, we just saw that light go away. Interestingly, so they're nearing sunrise. So the sun angle may be a factor, but that's speculation.
So, certainly a fair speculation, I would say.
But the attitude looks pretty stable based on the display on the lower right. Nose up, high angle of attack, no sudden movements or anything, so it looks pretty stable.
Yeah, not seeing any aggressive changes in the the numbers there on the bottom left either. So that seems to all be in. One thing to note from the performance that we've seen so far, Michael Nichols over at the Starlink side of the house for SpaceX, adding to the Starlink conversation. A little bit more of that plasma color change. Saying that, quote, we've successfully communicated with all satellites using RF and laser links and have been able to download key telemetry from the 20 Starlink V3 satellites. So some more confirmation of good data that has come down from the Starlink constellation. Just about 10 minutes away from the start of the landing burn here for Ship 40. A little more than 64 kilometers in altitude and descending. A little bit small, but in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you can see with the telemetry data the position of Ship 40, currently out over the Indian Ocean as we speak, just approaching the western side of Australia, a little bit to the northwest of that continent. See the plasma streaking around one of those ship catch points there, just beneath the forward flaps. This will be good data for SpaceX to get back, obviously, when they want to catch the ship on future orbital launches. They want to make sure that there is good integrity on the ship catch points. Starting to get more into the daylight here and a little bit more definition from the clouds beneath Ship 40 as it makes its way towards the splashdown site. Really coming into view now. "57 minutes into flight, less than 10 minutes to the start of the landing burn. Some more actuation from the rear flaps.
can really see the deceleration. Those numbers in the lower left ticking down quickly now.
Yeah, definitely starting to pick up nicely as ship cruises on towards the sunrise. Ship should be transonic in about 4 minutes' time. Now approaching nearly 1 hour from the initial liftoff of Starship Flight 13. Getting close to the end of this test flight with a number of the big milestones completed by SpaceX. A good relight of the Raptor during the coast phase, deployment of 20 Starlink version 3 satellites. Some more data learned about the Super Heavy booster, now completing the landing burn that they had hoped. SpaceX noting that ship is leaving peak heating. Temperature reduction underway. From this vantage point, the heat shield looks pretty good. We'll, of course, hopefully get some nice views from the landing zone buoys. And that'll give us a really good sense of where things stand. Ship now at maximum entry dynamic pressure. A little more than an hour into the flight. Rapidly approaching transonic speeds, and then ship will slip beneath subsonic speeds, traveling below the speed of sound here in just the next few minutes. As you can see with the graphic behind our clock, the views from ship that we've been seeing are made possible because of the Starlink satellite constellation currently on orbit. Worth noting that SpaceX did get the contract from NASA to provide Starlink laser terminals that will be fixed to the Orion spacecraft to provide 4K views during the Artemis 3 mission next year. So we will be getting views of similar clarity externally from the Orion spacecraft, which should hopefully give some really nice views during the approach and docking portions of the flight when the Orion spacecraft makes its approaches to both the Blue Moon Mark II Alpha vehicle as well as future Starship version 3 rocket. Just about an hour, 3 minutes into flight. Ship now below 1,000 kilometers per hour. Landing burn coming up in the next about a minute and a half. As we're coming into these final milestones, let's go ahead and listen in as ship makes its final entry towards the landing burn, the flip, and then the reduction from 3 down to 2, down to 1. Let's listen in.
If we've got our buoys and drones in range with the recovery team, they're going to be standing by to try and get some additional views of Starship's heat shield, which from kind of our initial looks, it did pretty well on the flight uphill, but we'll continue to dig through all the visual data as we get it. We didn't do any real stress tests or anything on this flight. We did do, you heard our landing Large flight controller call out. We were doing the swoosh maneuver. This is kind of the final maneuver that we plan to have starships returning to Starbase do. That will essentially hook them out over the Gulf before coming in and over Tower 2. But about 10 seconds away, look for 3 Raptors, the 3 in the middle, to light up, do a flip. Let's see if we can get this thing in the water. 3 sea levels lit. Seeing healthy chamber pressures on. Did our flip down to 2. Starship descending into the Indian Ocean, down to 1. And we're in the water. And it's a soft splashdown in the water. That is a first. That is the softest splashdown we have ever had with the Starship there in the Indian Ocean.
It's bound to be an exciting day for our recovery team. I mean, that huge milestone to even get to soft splashdown, much less have the vehicle stay afloat.
Yeah,
I will.
The teams are super hyped here. Got some crowd here at Starbase Texas. Everyone's super excited. We never really get to see Starship floating so serenely in the Indian Ocean, so we're certainly enjoying these extended views. Like I said, we're really pumped about this. I want to check in with Tyler. Tyler, how is Hawthorne feeling about Lucky Flight 13?
Hey, Kate, we are so excited about another successful Starship test flight and those gorgeous Starlink views that we had. And we can also confirm that we managed to make contact with all 20 of those V3 sats. So it's
and some sustained views of the Ship 40. Another good view of Ship 40. A really nice drone view of the heat shield. This is the first time that Starship upper stage has splashed down where it's remained in that much intact, where it has not exploded, and they can really just take their time and really take a good hard look at the ship heat shield. Views coming in and out from the SpaceX broadcast, but a really nice extended view of that. Although it looks like there we go, back to the views there. Stephen, as we've got some additional views of the ship heat shield, your thoughts, and actually onboard cameras still streaming via Starlink.
Really, really amazing. We'll still have a good telemetry connection with the ship in the water intact. Getting all the up close imagery of the heat shield is going to be a big haul for the heat shield team at SpaceX. So I think for the ship, from the ship's perspective, this was probably the most successful flight of the ship to date. Obviously, the booster did not have a controlled splashdown, but the ship performed marvelously, and I suspect there's a good chance of an orbital flight with the next mission. We'll see.
Yeah, the fact that not only is the ship remaining as intact as it currently is, but the fact that they are still able to beam back views from the ship in the water for as long as they have. Certainly the teams involved with ship engineering have to be ecstatic about many of the system performances of ship. Obviously, they'll study quite a bit from, and look at the engine shot there. That is something. My goodness. Just to that last point of yours, Stephen, given how well ship has performed, but the question's still outstanding regarding the Super Heavy booster, does make it seem like that there may be a possibility for an orbital flight with the Flight 14 mission, if that comes next month or perhaps in September.
I think a good chance. I wouldn't be surprised if they attempt to do another splashdown with the booster before they bring it back to Starbase on a subsequent flight. But Starship performed really well today, and this
looks
imagery,
like there are some tiles that are. Can't tell if those are just discolored or if those are missing tiles.
I'm looking at that too. I don't know if those were dinged or damaged, or potentially the tiles that were intentionally left off. I don't know. But I will note that the ship is not rust colored. We saw that last year. It came down intact on target, but the heat shield was all orange from some oxidation, and it was a largely successful flight. But that was one big takeaway: is they need to make some changes to the heat shield because it was not in good shape. Don't see that today.
So normally the plan with a ship is just to sink it, since there's not much that's salvageable. But given that there's a very buoyant ship right now that seems to be, pretty well surviving, do you think that there's even an outside possibility that they might be able to tow this thing to shore and actually get their first recovered Starship?
I think they're going to try. They're going to think about it. They're not going to blow it up in the next 15 minutes, I suspect. I think they'll think about it. We'll see if they can do it.
I mean, it definitely presents maybe this was in an outside thought for them that they might be able to do this at some point, but the recovery team has to be, plotting and scheming at this point. I imagine, just thinking of, what could we marshal fast enough to hook safely to ship and bring it to shore? I mean, that would be great data for the engineers to be able to actually get some chunk, if not a large bit of Starship, whether it's studied down there in Australia or somehow managed to be barged over to Starbase or maybe to Florida, possibly sending some of those heat shield tiles back to the bakery and, getting a closer inspection on those. It just seems too good of an opportunity to pass up.
Yeah, it really does. I'm not sure how they can do it. Towing it, I think would risk it breaking apart in rough seas. If you have to bring in some heavy equipment, that's going to take time. So I am skeptical that they can do it initially, but I think they're thinking about it. As I said, I think it would be foolish not to think about it and see what they can do.
Absolutely. Well, as we've got both ship and super heavy booster down in their respective aquatic landing zones, that's just about going to do it for us here with Starship Flight 13. But before we wrap things up, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye to our friend Stephen Clark. Stephen's space reporter over at Ars Technica. Stephen, two-part question to you. Where beyond the website can folks find your writings and coverage of the space program? And what do you have your eye on with the next several days or week to come?
Yeah, you can find me at arstechnica.com. That's where you'll find space reporting from myself and my colleague Eric Berger at Ars Technica. My X handle is at Stephen Clark1. My name is with a PH. And as for what I'm looking forward to the next coming days or weeks, looking forward to actually a bit of a vacation. I'll say that first of all, but looking forward to writing more about Golden Dome. I think that's something that I've been really trying to focus on the last few months is the evolution of that program and what may happen to Golden Dome if there's a change in Congress this fall. And so that's something I'm really looking forward to digging into. As for August, looking forward to the launch of the Roman Space Telescope at the end of on Falcon Heavy. That's a big one. And innumerable other things as well. So lots of things on the horizon.
Well, we hope to see you down here in Florida for the Roman launch next month. That's going to be, I think, a quite spectacular one for all of us here. Obviously, seeing a Falcon Heavy is always a treat. And, for the folks that have been working on the Roman telescope for quite some time, to see that head off towards Lagrange Point 2 is going to be quite spectacular for them as well and the broader NASA science team. So, Stephen Clark with Ars Technica, thank you as always for joining us. Look forward to catching up again.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks, Will.
Thank you. Take care. And before we go ahead and wrap up our broadcast, of course, our Adam Bernstein was down there at Starbase to capture the launch. So let's go ahead and run it back and see what his view was like in full.
Can you see it? Rick, can you see it?
as we continue to watch this video captured by our Adam Bernstein, want to thank a few folks in the live chat who've been very kindly supporting our coverage today. Want to thank Jimbo for a $20 super chat coming in before the launch, saying Lucky 13. Let's get this candle lit. CRS_ with membership for 40 months now at the pad leader level, who says woohoo. Thanks for all the coverage, Spaceflight Now. And hat tip to the chat and the mods. Good hot staging views there from Adam's tracker camera. Marla Plunk with a $20 super chat as well. Thank you so much, Marla. Thinking that's for the coverage. Welcome into new channel members Joe Darrow, joining us at the pad leader level, and Mary K. Cat at the mission specialist level. Thanks to both of you. Thanks to Arena's Emmanuel for super chat there, and to Base NJI as well, $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Deborah Moore with a $20 super chat as we look back at pad 2 and pad 1 just off to the right there, following a very successful Starship flight by the majority of the milestones that they had out in front of them. Looks like the road is back open again. See some vehicle traffic down there now. Parker with a $10 super chat says, keep up the great work, Spaceflight Now. Thank you, Parker. Deborah Moore with another $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Deborah. And Whiterun City Guard with a $5 super chat saying, beautiful launch coverage, Spaceflight Now team. Keep up the good work. Thank you all for the kind words and for the support this evening. And that, my friends, will do it for our coverage of Starship Flight 13. Want to thank the team who's been working hard not only on the launch coverage today, but in the run-up to the attempt last week and in the time in the interim. Lots been going on behind the scenes to make sure we kept things moving along. So big thanks to our Adam Bernstein down there at Starbase, and to our team here in Florida, John Pisani and Stephen Young. Also want to give a shout out and a thank you to our friends over at Avid Space, formerly Lab Padre, for their support with some stellar reviews from Starbase, both before and after launch. And you can check them out both over at their YouTube channel. I believe their handle is Lab Padre, but you can find them by searching for Avid Space, and view of Starbase from their cameras, also part of our 24/7 live stream, Launchpad Live. I want to thank our moderators in the chat who've been helping us out throughout the course of the coverage. Thanks to Jeff Hansen and to M. Teresa for helping us out in the live chat, and to channel member Cumulus Granatus for answering folks' questions in the chat as well. Also to Jules for popping in as well, one of our other moderators this evening. Big thanks as well, as always, to you, dear viewer. We know there are lots of places to go when it comes to live launch coverage, and we certainly appreciate your time and attention and being with us this evening. And if you've not got your fill of launch coverage just yet, of course, the weekend is on the horizon, and in just a little less than 14 hours, Falcon 9 rocket is set to lift off from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California with another batch of 24 Starlink V2 mini satellites heading up into orbit. We'll have live coverage of that beginning about 30 minutes prior to liftoff. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks. And until then, thanks for tuning in, and bye-bye.